I want to tell you a very inspiring story about John today. John is one of my Patreon supporters, and it's just a great story, and I just wanted you to know about what happened because it was inspiring on very many levels. Let me explain. John got in touch with me because he's been using a piece of code that I've written up on my website many years ago in how to prevent direct file access to things that are hosted on your WordPress website, or in fact on any website, but specifically on WordPress. And the way this works is people hot linking means they have access to your file system, because the file that you link to, like a picture or PDF file, needs to be publicly accessible. Otherwise your website won't be able to pull it in without a hitch. But some people make use of that, and some documents are only meant for internal use. Like if I host an image and 10,000 other people are using it, pulling it in on their websites, then I have a big bandwidth hit on my server, and I don't really want that to happen. Same with logged in users, people who have access to your WordPress website, who are logged in, and you want to give them access to a PDF, but not everyone else. They can be prevented from doing that. So John's been using that piece of code, and he was very happy with it. And he had a question about how to make a modification to that. And so that's how we got in touch. So I recommended a couple of plugins to him, and he said, well, this one's pretty close to what I want, but it's got a bit of functionality that I'd like to have added. Could I perhaps do that? And I said, actually, maybe I can. Let me have a look at it. And I gotta be honest with you, I'm always ambivalent about coding challenges, because if somebody has written code that I don't know anything about, then that's tricky. So sometimes a lot of digging and investigative work has to go in for me to identify what piece of code needs to be changed. But what I really appreciated was that John had already done that. So he said, hey, I've looked through that plugin, and here's the piece of code that I believe I need a bit of help with. And fair enough, it was really easy for me to then go, that's how this code does it. So that's kind of exciting for me to see how other coders work and learn from that as well. So immediately I got something back there. So I like that. I like that very much. And I could help him, which was great. I could implement the functionality he was looking for, and he was extremely happy. And in fact, he was so happy that he said, can I buy you a drink? Can I support you? And I've directed him to my Patreon page, and he signed up to a fairly high tier, and I'm thinking, wow, that is phenomenal. So that was already really, really nice feedback that I got there, and that made me extremely happy. So it's really good to remember these moments and say, hey, look, you've helped a total stranger and you didn't really expect anything, but now you have another Patreon supporter. So that's awesome. That's awesome in itself. I find that extremely inspiring. It's like my friend Oliver says, a circle of energy kind of completes. But if that happens on several levels at the same time, you're really in the flow of things. May I drive? Oh, he drives, so I drive. Good. Let's all drive. And so this is what this case was all about. I didn't just make somebody happy, so I get something out of that. I like making people happy. I've also gained a Patreon supporter and financial support out of that. That's a second level. And on the third level, I've learned something from this code and from how his functionality could be implemented. So that's nice. So third level, that was active there. So that was a few weeks ago, and I keep thinking about it. And a couple of days ago, John got in touch with me again because he had found another piece of code somewhere on the internet that displays the cookies, the contents of the cookies itself that a WordPress website is using on a particular page. And this is a touchy subject because according to new European GDPR regulations, cookies is a hot topic, but oftentimes what we do is we get this EU consent that we now have to agree to basically all cookies, and that's it. There's this blanket OK button on pretty much every website we visit I would actually like to see something like a general okay to everything I'm going to serve today button, so I don't get bothered by that anymore. But more importantly, we don't often actually see who is plastering what cookies on the system. And that's what John wanted to implement. So he said, hey, I found this piece of code that gives me a list of every cookie that's currently being used on the site. And he said, well, I would like to have this functionality in which I would like to see only external cookies and not WordPress cookies. So I need to have some kind of a filter there that tells me if the cookie contains the string WordPress or the string WP, then please don't display that. And that's something I thought, hey, that should be easy to implement, and that's an interesting piece of code in itself, which is from 2012 by a WordPress user who had exactly the same question, and he didn't find any adequate solutions there, so he went ahead and wrote his own code. And John's directed me there, and I'm thinking, wow, this would be great to write a small plugin from that literally just displays the cookies with a shortcode attached. So again, there's a lot of learning for me going on, and it's nice to see, oh, that's how that works, you know. So this is what I'm getting out of it. It's just really this is a nice kind of, you know, works on several levels. This morning we finished this project off. There was another little warning message that I had to take care of, and it was, you know, now it's in pretty good condition, and if I wasn't so rushed for time, I would probably go ahead and do that plugin right now, but I've got to go to my day job, so I can't do that right now. But so that's how we got in touch, and this is already a very inspiring, very interesting part to the story. But and again, this is the multi-level kind of thing. We got chatting, and I believe I told him that I went through this rough patch about colon cancer there a few years ago. And yeah, it's one of those things that I consider myself to be extremely happy to be still alive. And as it often is, like-minded people kind of vibrate on the same energy plane there. John told me that he was born blind, and that after about 60 operations in the Moorfield Eye Hospital in London, he can now see more or less well enough to have a phenomenal life. And that is just amazing. I mean, that is just, you know, talk about miracles. They do exist, and we must remember that they do. And it's just, if you just acknowledge these things and celebrate those little moments, that's just awesome. So I get a lot of energy from that, and that's why I find that a very inspiring incident, meeting John, helping him out, him becoming my Patreon supporter, and us sharing a kind of a totally different yet very related, miraculous medical history there. That's just cool. I like it. That's something I found that very inspiring, and I thought I wanted to share that with you, because it's more important for me to remember these small milestones along a journey. You know, there'll be the point where we won't be here anymore, or it's also easy to just let time slip by, and by August, well, who remembers whom I've met when? And, you know, yeah, crazy. I've sent an email today to Steve Shepherd. He's the author of Storyist, and that's a creative writing application for the Mac, and I've been using it for several years. I've used it when I wrote Broken Barrels, Tales of a Super Survivor, and it's just a phenomenal help to get my writing going, and it helps you organize things. It's a phenomenal piece of software, and in fact it inspired me so much that I made a whole series about it on my other channel. I did that because I wanted to help out my friend Jerry, who's writing his 5th book right now, and he's doing that in Microsoft Word when we last spoke about it. And Word, I like Word for, I don't know, a 2-3 page document, but if it comes to something like in excess of 10,000 words, it's really difficult for Word to be useful in the creative process. And I thought I want to make a series of videos for Jerry, and eventually it kind of became a series for the whole world, and I don't think there's anything quite like it on YouTube. So yeah, the Storyist series, I'm going to link to that in the description of this video. And anyway, I did that last year, and I totally forgot to tell Steve about it, the developer of Storyist, when I was nearly a year later, and it turns out that he's already working on the next version of Storyist, Storyist 4, and he's looking for beta testers. So I thought, hey, that's phenomenal. I'm going to get in touch with him and tell him, do you know what, Steve, last year I made this series about your product and I totally forgot to tell you about it. And it's I'm getting very nice appreciative comments about this on YouTube, and so it has definitely got a place, and the developer of the software didn't even know about it. So one of those things, time just goes by, and I guess that was my point. Time just flies so quickly that it's very easy for us to forget the accomplishments and the achievements that we've made and the inspiring moments that came with it along this journey. Oh, road closed, I see here, that's interesting. So yes, and I thought that's very important that we make notes of it. I use this to make my notes, and if it helps you to get inspired as well and make notes, then I hope I've served my purpose. So yes, shout out to my new Patreon supporter John. I very much appreciate the coding challenge, and I very much appreciate the fact that you got in touch and that we both seems like we've had a really good experience. And shout out to Steve Shepherd, and all the best with Storyist 4 hitting the App Store and the several other marketplaces very soon.